Kia ora everyone. It is my distinct pleasure to be here to join you today to share a few insights from Air New Zealand's digital journey, particularly over the last couple of years. Air New Zealand's been on a really good growth trajectory for the last sort of 5 years, and every single part of the business has had to evolve, mature and grow up, and right now digital's in the spotlight. It's digital's turn to deliver more, increasingly as the business turns to digital to support growth and help drive innovation. And Air New Zealand has a pretty good innovation story and reputation out there in the marketplace. And it's understandable and pretty well earned in the customer space when you think about products like Sky Couch, our unaccompanied minors product with the wristband, and indeed our mobile app. In fact, a normal barbecue conversation for me goes something like, oh wow, you work at Air New Zealand, great, I really love what you guys do, I really like that mobile app, and you know, I really like how it orders me coffee when I walk into the lounge, that's incredible. And that makes me kind of reflect a little bit on technology and digital transformation. It's not about the big breakthroughs, it's about meeting the small unmet needs of people. That's kind of what I think digital innovation is all about. If we just reimagine that barbecue conversation with a pilot, the conversation would be quite different. Hey, you work at Air New Zealand, you're a pilot, that must be awesome. You must have some really cool tools to do your job. And the pilot's response would be, not really. I've got a bunch of apps that kind of feel pretty clunky and disjointed. Connectivity's an issue. Basic communication is not where it needs to be. And so if we're serious about digital transformation at Air New Zealand, we have to turn all of our customers, both our traditional customers that pay us money and also our internal customers, into net promoters. And that's very much the focus for where we are today with digital. So as an organisation, digital is evolving from what was a kind of traditional corporate IT function into a digital organisation at Air New Zealand with a greater level of aspiration, and perhaps that's a similar journey to many of you in the room. So hopefully there's a few insights for you today. I'll just start with a few slides to give a sort of broader context. So we're in our 77th year of operation at Air New Zealand. Some of you may have seen the 75th anniversary and the various kind of exhibitions that we ran in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch. And we started our innovation journey very early in that very plane, the Empire flying boat. We were the first airline to figure out how to boil water at altitude for a cup of tea. And I think that kind of sets our innovation pedigree really early on in our journey. And we've had incredible highs and lows along the way. Air New Zealand as a company is a very important company for New Zealand. We're an ambassador for the country, and in fact, you know, we're not just making sausages or widgets. As I say, we're an ambassador for the country, and we're held to a very high level of account. The expectation on Air New Zealand, particularly as an organisation, is really high. And look, at the risk of a little motherhood and apple pie, key point from the last slide is I think it's the weight of public expectation that in part drives Air New Zealand to be thinking about what's next in terms of its products and services and digital innovation. It's that public expectation that really pushes us forward. Additionally, you know, it's not just public expectations that are important. At the risk of kind of motherhood and apple pie, we're living in an increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world. This is the new normal. It's affecting both our consumers and our staff, and we just have to face up to that reality. Also, competition is increasing. We're seeing more competition on all of our international routes than we've ever seen before. But it's not just the airlines that are driving a new benchmark for behaviours and excellence at Air New Zealand. It's the technology companies. The top 5 technology companies by market cap today are the Facebooks, the Googles, and you've heard some of this already today. They are an ongoing source of danger, and they are also an opportunity for us to partner and learn from these companies. We also need to be aware of the newer companies, the Airbnbs, the Ubers, who have harnessed all of the learnings about being adaptable, being data-driven into their companies, and are incredibly disruptive for us. And so, you know, what's our response to this? Well, the old adage is very, very true. You keep your friends close, but you keep your frenemies even closer. We're not above borrowing with pride from other companies. In fact, our unaccompanied minors wristband was inspired by Disney's Magic Band. And we continue to engage with these companies. Recently, the leadership team from Air New Zealand went to Silicon Valley, where we spoke to all of the companies along the bottom row there, and we learned a bunch of stuff from them. One is that, you know, they're all data-driven, and we've kind of heard that ad nauseum, I'm sure. But more than that, they are massively focused on products and very specifically focused. So a good example is Uber, who have over 150 product teams just working that one taxi app. The level of specificity that these product teams are able to focus on is mind-boggling. But most fundamentally, we learned that all of the big players like Facebook, Google, they actually have aspirations to have AI and machine learning at the core of their business model, and we've heard a lot about that today as well. The key point here for this slide is there's a bunch of things that impact our business. We try not to lose sleep over the things that we can't control. We believe digital technology can have a massive influence on some of those controllable factors. So let's get into digital specifically at Air New Zealand. We set ourselves a vision to reimagine travel through inspiring digital experiences. We set on this because we recognise that user experience, in terms of good user experience of our products, is what will differentiate ourselves in the marketplace and will make us world-class. And it's also recognising the opportunity we have to think beyond travel, to think beyond airline tickets, and to challenge ourselves to think disruptively. To realise this ambitious vision, we need to change behaviours. For those of you that are some way advanced in a digital transformation, hopefully you'll agree with me that 90% of the challenge for any digital transformation is cultural. What do we mean by digital in the bloodstream? It's about asking our people to turn up digitally curious every day, people that want to make an impact, to explore the art of the possible, and to not accept the status quo. It's about putting our customers, whether they be external or internal customers, at the heart of everything we do with customer journeys so that we can understand the pain points and therefore the opportunities. It's not enough for us to be world famous in New Zealand anymore. Christopher Luxon has challenged us to be truly iconic on the world stage, truly world class. And we need to get away from the idea that if it's not invented here, it's no good. If we didn't build it ourselves, then it's not relevant. We need to borrow from airline and non-airline exemplars, use more of this outside-in thinking, drawing in the best we can from other industries, and particularly non-airline exemplars. Aviation as an industry is incredibly inefficient, has low performance in terms of profitability since the industry was established. I think as a whole it's lost money over time and has really low levels of business process optimization. So comparing yourself, being the fittest leper in the colony is not really a benchmark for us. We need to look outside airlines and drive an experimental mindset. So that's really important. It's really important for us in digital to be experimental, to fail fast and to learn from our mistakes. But, it's another challenge to educate our business and our senior leaders outside of digital that that's also okay. It's not important for you to digest the words on that slide, just to say, I think one of the things that is quite different in our digital organisation today is that we're much clearer on strategy, and we're much clearer on how the work that our teams do at a team level translates through to our digital strategy and to our corporate strategy. And we align it through 4 pillars: customer, commercial, technology, and culture. And those are the 4 pillars that we use to align from corporate strategy down to digital and into a team level. And I guess the key thing is our teams are so much more connected to strategy and have a much better sense of the importance of the work that they do today than they ever have done before. We have achieved a reasonable amount over the last couple of years, but we're really just at the start, and we've really barely scratched the surface. But if I can have bragging rights just for a few minutes, 40 websites in 10 languages around the world, move to responsive design and move from on-premise technology to AWS cloud, leveraging all the automation, spot pricing that comes with that. For those of you that have run into Oscar is our first foray into AI and chatbots in our customer channel, and we see huge opportunities there for that to drive a better and deeper customer experience. We're really focused on APIs. We have a huge team working to accelerate the development of APIs across our business, both customer side and also internal customer, and decommission a lot of the old legacy middleware that we've had built up over time. And increasingly, you see the teams are growing in confidence. We're seeing a lot more daytime deployments. We're seeing teams being a lot more self-managing and confident to deliver what they need to. Clearly a prerequisite, though, for digital transformation is addressing the technology debt that exists, and that is acutely felt in operations where we have a really high kind of monolithic percentage of the systems that are there. We have, these systems are often not capable of supporting modern API and services-based architectures. It's a significant constraint, but you need to recognise it, and we have a plan to modernise. It spans many years. Realistically, it's probably a decade's work, but we've made a start on that. I'll just talk a little bit about our platform strategy. So overall, our platform strategy is to contain costs, upgrade core systems, and gradually phase out legacy. In parallel, we're gradually implementing new technologies towards our vision of open, secure, and flexible digital platforms. Our principles support the delivery of our FY18 digital priorities, which in turn support our strategic business outcomes. In order to prepare ourselves for the immense technology changes and for us to be able to speed up our cadence, we need to change the way we work. Designers, data scientists, agile coaches, AI developers, these are all roles from the digital world, and one thing or two things are sure: we need them, and there's not enough of them out there. And since it's so difficult to find talent, we need to put extra focus on retaining it. We've run an intern program recently at Air New Zealand. We're in our second year, actually. So last year we took on 13 interns, and this year we'll be doing a sort of similar number. And we're finding that hugely beneficial to bring the millennials in, to grab their perspective. They come to, they're surfacing new ideas and concepts that I don't think some of our teams would have naturally got to on their own. So they're providing enormous value in that respect. And so with the current and future anticipated talent shortages, we need to make training and development a critical component of our talent management strategy at Air New Zealand. So I talked about journeys before. Journeys are incredibly important, and we've got a real focus on UX within our kind of newly formed digital team, and it starts with customer journeys. And this is our traditional customer journey. It's been enormously valuable at Air New Zealand for aligning the conversation around what we do with customers, where we invest, and understanding what the priorities are. So we're taking the same approach to internal customers. We've got a crew journey, which has been equally valuable for us to understand, tooling requirements for our cabin crew and for our pilots, understand priorities around the kind of minimum viable products and the sequence that we're going to be releasing those in terms of new apps for the cabin crew. We've recently developed a cargo journey, and we're in discussion with our engineering teams about building something very similar for them. Emerging technology is super important, and it's very easy in an operational portfolio to be quite distracted with the day-to-day kind of what I'd call run type aspects, keeping systems running. So I've established a specific focus and product team around emerging technology. What you can see there are what are considered to be, I guess, the 10 essential technologies. We're active on 2 or 3 of these at the moment with an eye on a couple more, and I'll just talk through a bit of that. So as far as robotics goes, we see RPA and robotic process automation as being really relevant for Air New Zealand's business. We're trialling these technologies across engineering and particularly finance. We see that particularly those kinds of back of house sort of what were previously quite paper-heavy processes are excellent candidates for RPA, and we see this as being a real big lever in the business going forward. As far as IoT goes, we are just about to kick off an asset tracking for our ground service equipment. So this is every asset that lives out on the ramp or in the hangars that the engineers use. We want to be able to track that so these guys aren't losing time trying to find this equipment when they need it. And as far as AI goes, we talked a little bit about Oscar earlier. We've developed a chatbot for operations as well, and probably slightly nuanced from an engagement like Oscar, where it's done on a Facebook Messenger platform. Given that operational environments are often noisy and quite safety sensitive, where you need your eyes up, we've built a platform that is activated through a wearable, through an Apple Watch, connecting to a Microsoft Azure stack, where we're dragging in cognitive services, natural language processing, all of that stuff, so that we can actually use a chatbot to engage with our various systems of record, our legacy back end within operations. And we see enormous relevance, even though we haven't gone live with this yet, we see enormous relevance across cabin crew, airports, front of house, our baggage handlers out the back, and our lounge staff. Moreover, though, this particular experiment was a great example of how a small team grabbing a new piece of technology can kind of learn fast, build fast, and then get that out for the business to have a little play with. It was a really positive project. In terms of operations, you can imagine the challenge. So we aspire to more of an agile operating model within digital. And that's particularly hard in an operational context where you've got, as I say, high legacy back end and quite a sort of your more highly tenured members of the team as well. So basically the strategy here was to choose an exemplar team, a lighthouse team to kind of role model the behaviours. I chose the crew mobile team for that. A couple of reasons why. Particularly they had a very specific product set which allowed them to get quite intimate with the products that they were developing. They also had the benefit of having the recent recruits in from organisations outside of Air New Zealand. So people from companies that were far more agile than we are and far more product-centric, and they're able to bring those disciplines in quite quickly. And this team has actually provided the benchmarks now for both business engagement, but also for all the artefacts around the UX, the journey mapping, all that good stuff. And it's delightful to see this team now moving into a build phase. Look, just the last slide from me really, before we jump into a quick video. We're at the start of a digital transformation at Air New Zealand, and we've got a long way to go. Realistically, it's at least a 5-year journey. And I'd just like to use the analogy, if I could, of a flywheel, which is borrowed from Jim Collins' Good to Great book. Pushing a flywheel is hard. The first turn feels like an impossibility, but slowly, turn after turn, momentum builds, and the wheel starts to store up rotational energy. Eventually, the wheel is spinning so hard through its own momentum. Getting from that first push to watching the machine run on its own energy is exactly what we would like to see in digital at Air New Zealand. We're confident that a combination of disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action, and being fanatically consistent all the time will get us there. I'll just play a little video and then we can take some questions.
Thank you very much. Got time for a few questions. The most popular question that has been asked is, when will RFID bag tags be available so I can go from curb to bag drop-off to gate?
Yep, okay. So RFID bag tags is almost like the holy grail in aviation. There's been a few false starts around the world. We think the technology is kind of getting to a point where it's possible for us to do this. There are a whole lot of constraints, and I probably haven't got time to sort of go into it, but really the challenge with RFID tags globally is actually having a global standard that actually works across every airport. So occasionally you see airlines come out and say we've got these RFID tags, but they'll only work in their domestic market or in some airports around the world. And we do see probably a separation between international and domestic. We can do something we think quite clever and quite soon in the domestic space, but I can't talk about that just yet. International is probably still, I'd say, realistically 18 months away.
Cool. What do you see are the biggest opportunities for digital innovation here in New Zealand?
At Air New Zealand?
In New Zealand, in general.
I think blockchain is interesting. It's not a technology I understand enormously well, but from what I can understand, I think the potential, if I just think about at Air New Zealand rather than sort of broader across all of New Zealand, blockchain is something, you know, that chain of trust, if we think about its applicability to, say, aircraft parts and being able to reflect all of the work that's done on a roadable part through its life, I think that's enormously powerful. And I could see that in the next 5 years, blockchain will probably change the way we do business significantly.
Nice. Now, you've been at Air New Zealand for some time now. What's been the most memorable project you've worked on?
Okay. I've been pretty lucky at Air New Zealand. I've had a few memorable projects. Doing the mobile app was probably one of the most satisfying pieces of strategy that then landed into, you know, a developed product and taking that forward. I also did something that was a little less visible but no less kind of satisfying. I led, basically Air New Zealand used to have very poor quality of data centre provision. We modernised the entire IT estate, moved all of our data centres into kind of tier 3 facilities, and in so doing basically removed the number one risk that sat against then group IT for Air New Zealand. So that was probably the most satisfying thing.
Nice. Do you monitor the apps of other airlines? Someone has mentioned that United has some really nice features.
Yeah. Certainly always looking at what the competition are doing. I know that, you know, my colleagues in the customer space do look at other apps and are always looking at sort of the global exemplars. We know who those are, as I said, both aviation and non-aviation, and grabbing what we can to pull into our own customer channels. We need to do more of that on the operational side for internal customers.
Just a couple more questions. Here's an interesting one. Does Air New Zealand have a role in innovating to reduce the carbon footprint of the industry?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a role we take very seriously. So Air New Zealand is absolutely in the conversation around sustainability, around biofuels, constantly looking to see where we can reduce fuel usage, and that's just an ongoing focus for us. It's hard to get away from the fact that we are a massive polluter, but the reality is, in terms of the way our fleet runs, so we have one of the youngest fleets in the world. Average age of our aircraft is 7 years, and we obviously get the benefit of the newness of that fleet in terms of its efficiencies, and by global benchmarks, Air New Zealand is actually one of the more efficient carriers in the world.
Fantastic. And finally, what do you see to be the biggest disruptor to the airline industry?
I think some of those technology giants that I was talking about before, all of whom have got a fairly what would seem limitless appetite to kind of mediate our digital future and own the customer. So that's probably the most highest risk disruptor for us.
Fantastic. From Air New Zealand, Corran Roberts.
Thanks.